All right. So this is my 100th podcast episode, and I decided that I would change some of the format here. And I decided to invite my very good friend, Jillian Turecki, who has been on the podcast, who was recently on the podcast talking about relationships. And I asked her to interview me. So here we are. And it's really Ask Me Anything. So here we go. Ready, Jillian?
I was so excited. I mean, to wear the hat of the interviewer as opposed to being the interviewee. I'm super excited. You ready, Anna?
I'm ready. I'm ready to be the interviewee.
Okay, great. No, but in all seriousness, you're a coach, right?
That's right.
And not everyone who has a podcast is a coach, but I'm a coach as well. And one of the problems that I have with the term coach is that I feel like everyone's a coach now.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone's like, yeah, I'm a wellness person, or I'm a coach that, this or that. And I don't know, I feel like it's lost a lot of its meaning to the point where I almost cringe when I say I'm a coach. Like, I'm coming up with a different way to describe what it is I do rather than a coach. I mean, I used to be so I love what coach means, but I think it's become watered down. I think it's lost its meaning. So I'm wondering what being a coach actually means to you.
Oh, good question. I love this question. So, well, let me just go back to saying that a coach is a very special meaning to me because I grew up with great coaches. I grew up as a tennis player. So I had coaches in my life starting at around 9 years old, and they played such a big role in my life. And I would say, even to this day, things that my tennis coaches told me when I was growing up have influenced me in such a profound way. Like, I think being a tennis player has helped me. It's the part of me that I really love so much. But more than that, like, it kept me out of trouble growing up. It kept me focused. I learned so many great things from my coaches. So I actually got into coaching through being a coach because that was my first job as a coach, tennis coach. I taught at tennis camps. And then that was my first job in New York City. I moved to New York City and I was a tennis coach. Um, so I've had this relationship with the word coach for a very long time. And it's always been a really positive thing for me. And I started my company about 10 years ago. And at that time, coaching wasn't what it is now. It was very different. Like, when I would go out and people would say, "What do you do?" And I would say, "I'm a coach." People were like, "What does that mean?" Like, life coach, career coach. That wasn't really a term back then. And, so a few people knew what it was, but mostly it was associated with sports coaching. So it has changed the meaning of it now. In my heart, I still connect so much to being a coach because I feel like it's so much of who I am. And I really like to play that role. Like, I don't view myself as somebody who is, um, you know, going to tell you all the answers or going to give you the best advice, but I'm really going to coach you. That's what I'm here to do. And to me, that really means to bring out the best in you, to access and give you tools that can help you perform at your optimal level, to understand the mental game and then how that results in your behavior. So for me, the term coach, while I do think, it's been thrown around a lot, I think that, when it is used properly, I love it.
Yeah.
you
Yeah, I
know?
mean, that's kind of like how what it means to me. But I just think that now with, it's just people think, oh, you're just someone who gives advice. But I'm curious because you referenced being coached by amazing coaches as a tennis player. What's the most useful or profound advice or direction you've ever received from one of your coaches?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are two things. One is I really learned a lot about how to deal with loss. Losing was really hard on me. Tennis is an individual sport, and so when you lose, it's all on you, and when you win, it's all on you. And I would take losing really, really hard. But something that I learned from one of my coaches was to just get back out there and practice. Just, I remember I lost a match, probably that I should have won. I was a teenager, and I think I went to practice either that night or the very next day. And that was a big evolvement for me because when I was younger, I had moments where I would lock myself in the room for a couple of hours and just didn't want anything to do with tennis, would want to push it away. And so really learning how to recover more quickly from losses. And that's something that also I integrate in, how I view personal growth is like, how quickly can you recover from something that, doesn't work out the way that you want to, or a loss in any shape or form. So that's a skill that I think is also very useful as an entrepreneur and has helped me a lot in my business. So that's one. And the other I would just say is the importance of fundamentals, right? Like when you can get so fancy with things, but my coaches always encourage me to come back to the basics, like, basic footwork, basic foundations in a stroke. And, when you have the right foundation, you can do more fancy things, but you always need to come back to the foundation. And I think that having the right foundation in life, having the right foundation in business is
Wait,
so important.
this is so interesting to me. I'm just going to interrupt you for a second because I don't want to forget this thought. But I mean, because I really, really, really believe in the philosophy of always coming back to the foundation
Okay.
as being the most important thing when you've kind of, because it's easy to lose your way. It's easy to get ahead of yourself. It's easy to lose track. And then there's nothing more important than coming back to the foundation. So
Hmm.
you said that that's also been useful for you. Well, you said the losing thing about business, but how has returning to the basics or the foundation help you very specifically as an entrepreneur and as a businesswoman?
Yeah, well, I got very lost after I taught tennis in New York City for 2.5 years. I got burnt out. I worked my butt off. Like I worked 7 days a week. I made myself available all the time, and I got burnt out. And I was lost for a couple of years. I was jumping from job to job, apartment to apartment, relationship to relationship, and I forgot the fundamentals. And that's really when I came back to the things that I had learned in tennis, things like, getting, myself in a positive state. Like before I played tennis, I used to jump rope and listen to certain songs that would get me into the right state. So coming back to things like exercise for me, right? Because that had kind of fallen off the wagon and gotten all over the map for me. And it's something like, coming back to the basics, which is like exercise for me. Another thing that was really transformational for me that I learned through tennis was visualization. And I started picturing, well, what if my life is a mess right now? What is it that I really want? What does it look like? And visualizing what success looked like for me, and really feeling it and getting into, the picture of what it really looks like. So, and then the other thing is eating well. Like, when my life was out of whack, my eating was out of whack. So these are like very foundational principles, right? Like if your eating's out off course, if you're not exercising, and if you're not mentally preparing yourself, like these are the three foundations that are extremely important to your performance, right? They're very basic, but we can, if something happens, it's really easy to forget about all of those, you know?
You bring those principles into your coaching? Do you help people return to the basics if they are seeming off track or lost or anything like that? Do you ever just kind of start them there?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think that, um, for me, I've had a long journey. When my life was out of whack, my food was out of whack. And I know the importance of food and how that affected me mentally. I mean, when I wasn't eating proper nutrition, I was depressed. I was anxious. Like I could tell a difference when I was eating a lot of sugar and not a lot of, high fats and nutritious foods. That really affected me. So, of course we want to look at, you know, how how are you eating? Very basic, right? Um, have you ever had that experience, Jillian? I know you've gotten thrown off. So has your eating gotten thrown off?
No, you're trying to be the interviewer now. No, 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 no,
I was
no.
just curious if
Yeah,
if you
yeah,
got
yeah,
that
no, you just like
habit.
took the hat off of my head.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's fine, it's fine. But it's just really funny how that just happened. That was very slick. Yeah, of
Thank you.
course. I think eating is everything. I think, I think I think starting with the basics is the most important. I don't think you can't build anything if you don't have your foundation that's strong. But I also wanted to loop back to like how well you recover. I really think that how well a person recovers from any kind of loss, whatever they perceive as a loss or a failure, how they bounce back is really proportionate to the quality of their life. I think that's really like um,
Yeah.
I think that's a major key to quote unquote happiness. And I actually think that that's a big part of what coaching is. I mean, would you say, I don't know, to me, I feel like the, the primary struggle of the human being is learning how to recover.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I would say that's my definition of growth, right? Like how quickly can you bounce back? What's your time? Things that used to throw me off for, days or weeks and get me down and have me beat myself up, I can more quickly bounce back and say, kind of get out of that negative feedback loop. Um and
What taught you how to bounce back so quickly? Because I know that you have a pretty, long-standing spiritual practice that I don't think people really know about.
Mhm.
But it's a big, being someone who's known you for years, I know that you are very drawn to Buddhism, you've studied meditation, you've studied yoga. So how much of that plays a role in your development, your growth, your bouncing back, and all of it?
Yeah. So I'm gonna answer this through a story and then get more specific. So what comes to mind is, I kind of glazed over this time period in my life where I struggled because I had a lot of success as a tennis player. I wasn't the best in the country, but I had a lot of success. I was nationally ranked, and you know, um, and then I when I and so I, you know, I have this sense of confidence from my physical ability to do things. I'm a great athlete. Like I can throw a football.
Hmm.
I'm really confident. And so, I moved to New York when I was 22 by myself, really no connections, and I hustled at this tennis company and it was great. And then there was a span of about 6 years where literally I had 10 jobs and lived in like 8 different apartments. Um, and I hit this point where I realized that, okay, if for years things aren't going well, that it must be me. And that's really where I hit the yoga mat. When I was about 26, really intensely, I just felt like I got to connect with me. Um, I felt like I was like following these ideas that I didn't even know. I knew I like, for example, like that I had to get this 9 to 5 job and build my resume, where deep in my heart I knew that I really wanted to have my own business. And so I wanted to connect with myself. And so that's when I really hit the yoga mat. And plus, like I said before, I was struggling with my relationship with food, which was almost all consuming. I mean, I don't know if you've struggled with your relationship with food, you know how consuming it is. I mean, your thoughts are like obsessed about food. And so I wanted to connect. And I knew that yoga was going to be a way that I could connect with my body and that I could start to listen to myself. And um,
But what I'm really curious about is, so lots of people struggle, lots of women in particular struggle with food. Lots of people have these issues. Sometimes it's alcohol, whatever it is.
mhm,
But what were that moment where you're like, where you said to yourself, I got to get my ass on the mat and do yoga?
mhm,
I want to
yeah.
know what led to that aha moment, because a lot of people, especially in their 20s, wouldn't have that kind of insight or even that sort of resourcefulness or even know to do that. So do you think that was all the tennis and just already being in your body and knowing that getting physical was really important?
Yeah, I mean, I never think it's just one thing. It was a combination of things. I mean, my dad took me to a yoga class when I was 18. So yoga had always been kind of, I was aware of it through my dad. who's also a therapist, and he had given me a book on coaching. So I had these little, I had read one of my favorite books, which was like my first spiritual awakening, was The Seat of the Soul by Gary Zukov. And so I was getting these little tidbits from books, from a yoga class here or there. And then what was like the big tipping point for me was I didn't get my period for like 2 years because I was stressed and wasn't eating well and whatever else. And I started seeing an acupuncturist. This was when I was 26 years old. This was like the big tipping point for me. And I started seeing an acupuncturist, and within 1 month, I started menstruating again regularly. But it started to wake me up more. Like my craving for like there's something more just got bigger and bigger and bigger, because I realized that I knew on some way like I was not treating my body in a healthy way, and I was very confused by that because for so many years I did. And so this commitment, I would say, like, I'm very committed, and committed also to my spiritual practice and to health, partially because I think that's part of my upbringing, but partially because I know the power of it because I've experienced it firsthand. Like, I started when I was struggling and just feeling confused and lost and depressed, and I would go to a yoga class, I would feel better afterwards. When I would go to see an acupuncturist, I would feel better afterwards. And it was like kind of this, I want to say, like, we have this idea that it's like this like breakthrough moment, but it's a series of all these little small things that add up over time. And it's like almost, I want to say it's almost like an unfolding that just was like, like, I feel good, I'm going to show up again because I don't like the way that I feel if I don't show up. Right. So I really let that desire to feel good when you've been in pain, it's like you hit that threshold where you're like, no more. I don't want to feel that way. And you develop this desire to change. And I read a lot about yoga. I read a lot about um, energy and spirituality, and how that just became part of. I don't really know why. It just became part. It's I knew that was the answer. How's that? I
Yeah,
just
no,
knew.
yeah. I think it's interesting, as myself being a practitioner of yoga for I started at 26 as well, and so I'm older than you. So it's been like, many, many years, 18 years, and I've been teaching for about 14 or 15 years. And it's an interesting thing. I can't really remember. All I know is that I was pulled to it because I wanted to become more flexible in my body, and then it just kind of opened up this entire world. Was that when it really became conscious for you that that the body and the mind are not two entities, but they are intricately connected? I mean, they're basically one. Was that when you just were like, you can't address your mind without addressing your body, and when you address your body, you're also addressing your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I saw the effects of how food and alcohol was affecting my mind, right? I
Mm-hmm.
felt them through depression and anxiety, which essentially then would lead me to not be able to relax and fall asleep at night. Um, and so I knew that I was in that pattern, but I didn't really know how to get out of it. But acupuncture was really like there, this is energy, right? Like, I saw all these doctors for my to get to kind of get my period back, and it didn't work. And then I saw an acupuncturist and I got my period in 1 month, and I was like, whoa, there was like something being blocked in my body. Like, so
That's no joke. I mean, acupuncture is really, really phenomenal when it comes to things like this. When it comes to fertility stuff and hormonal stuff, I really think it's brilliant.
it's amazing. And that was really like, I was like, whoa, you know,
That was the eye-opening moment.
yeah. And
Really? Yeah.
Yeah, and just the endorphin rush that I got after it. Like I
Mhm.
felt so much lighter. Like I would walk in with kind of a heaviness to the acupuncturist, and then I would walk out with a certain lightness. And
Yes.
and I noticed the difference. And it really, and then because my body, was being more awakened through acupuncture, I started to like notice like more apparently like when I drink how it affects me. Whereas before, I had no clue. I was so unconscious of it. It was just like you drank and you wake up the next day and whatever. I was kind of
But
in
I
the,
feel like once you start to feel good and then you put some poison in your system, you just
you
feel,
notice it.
notice it.
Yeah. And with yoga,
Yeah, big time. When I started practicing yoga, like you, I was in my 20s, so I could definitely go out and go drinking, but I didn't want to because when I wanted to wake up and be okay to practice.
I love that you said that because, talking about behavioral changes, right? Like I didn't like, I think there becomes a point where, okay, let me just say, I'll use alcohol in this example. So I used to drink a lot, and I used to drink primarily to help me sleep at night, to help me cope with my social anxiety. And I never was like, okay, let's change this behavior, you
Mhm.
know,
Mhm.
but I started to heal myself and the behavior slowly dissolved where I'm at a point where I don't even have the desire to drink alcohol. It's not like I have this rule, like I don't drink or, you know, I'm only allowed a certain amount of, the desire isn't even there because I feel so good. And
Yeah,
I know,
yeah, sorry, go on.
and I know how it feels not to. And I make the desire isn't even there. Like
I
it's
think
not
that's the premise behind lifestyle change.
what.
I mean, I just think it's to when you change your lifestyle, you change your behavior. So it's not just like stop eating the sugar, stop eating the alcohol. You got to change your lifestyle because changing your lifestyle also makes you accustomed to a different way of being and a different way of going through the world and drinking and eating different things and then you don't and then all of a sudden you don't want something else. But I wanted to ask this question before I forget, which is why were you depressed?
I was so hard on myself. Gosh. I was talking to my college roommate the other day, and she's been talking to me a little bit about she's in some transition herself, and I said, and she's being really hard on herself. And I said, "Do you remember when I used to punch myself in the head? Like I literally would take my fist and punch myself in the head."
You would punch yourself in the head?
Punch myself in the head on the tennis court. I didn't do it off the court, but there
Okay.
were times where I would maybe once or twice I did it. That's not true. Maybe once or twice I did it off the court. My self-talk was so bad. I mean, I used to just be so mean to myself and just tell myself I'll never be successful and that I was fat and that um, something's wrong with me. I just had this really negative storyline.
That's
And the thing is, like when I was depressed, I remember having the thought, "I'm depressed." That's how it would go. "I'm depressed. I'm depressed." Like, and I wanted these certain things in my life that I didn't have, and so I would go, you know, I wanted to be in a relationship, and I felt like I couldn't figure out how to be in a relationship, and I wanted to like have my own business, and I couldn't figure out how to have my own business, and it was like I wanted these things, and I couldn't figure out how to actually have them, and there was this disconnect. But
right.
the disconnect was really with myself, and that's what I think is what was really making me depressed, is that I wasn't connected to myself. And that's what, why I am so committed to a spiritual practice is, I make time to come back to me and to hear my voice and to um, just pay attention. I mean, we're all like running around with our like a chicken with our head cut off, and we're not connecting with ourselves. And if we don't connect with ourselves, how can we have what we want if we don't fully know ourselves?
Yeah, is that ultimately what you're trying to do when you work with clients, is help them connect with, I don't know, intuition, inner guide, whatever it is?
Yeah, all of that. I think all of that is extremely important. I mean, there's so many factors to it. I mean, we're so indoctrinated by so many belief systems that we often can't even hear our own, and we don't even know what ours is,
Yeah.
and sifting through and sorting through like, okay, that's a belief, but that's not really what I believe,
Right.
and what is it that I really believe? So yeah, I think that's the core. I think that's our primary purpose, is to be the fullest expression of ourselves and to figure out what that is. And I think that's a lifelong journey. I think it evolves. I think it changes. I think our values change. But I think we know when we're disconnected.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. And the thought that came to my mind is that I really think that why I question, this is a question that comes up for me a lot, and so I'm wondering what your take is on it. Do you think that having a past, meaning having like serious struggle like yourself, like depression, anxiety, some food stuff, alcohol stuff, punching yourself on the head, like really being hard on yourself, and then having sort of like your own heroin journey of, by the way, that's not the drug,
The
but in the female.
hero, just
Yeah,
hero's journey.
hero's journey, but
Yeah.
heroin.
Yeah.
And do you think that that arms you with being a great coach? And do you think that most people who get into this business had to have had some sort of experience with real darkness in order to really help others?
Yeah, I think I'll answer your second question first. I think anybody who's in this business has really had to overcome something,
Hmm.
of some way, shape, or form, and whether they're still in it, or they're going through it, or they've actually come out on the other side. I think, yeah, I mean, I think that's majority of healers have dealt have been confronted by their own stuff to some capacity. I mean, we all are, but I think that um, people who choose the path to be healers maybe look at it a little bit more closely.
Do you think coaching is healing?
Yes,
Yeah.
certainly. I certainly think that. I actually think that it's a modernized therapy. I think therapy eventually will fade out to some capacity, because we've developed in the past 20 years more research about the brain and neuroscience and how we actually work in the past 20 years than we ever have. And I think that therapy is an old model. I don't want to knock therapy because I think it's useful. I think there's a time and place for it. But I think some of the ways, can have people sitting there for years rather than really extracting and providing, extracting pain and providing tools for comfort um, more quickly. We've discovered those tools. Um, Not that healing doesn't take time. Everybody, and I don't think that there should be a time on your healing process, which is hard. It's hard to let go of those expectations. And now I've forgotten your first question, Jillian.
No, I no, I mean, you basically answered it,
Okay.
but now this made me think of something else. Um, so let's just say there's a person listening to this podcast and is trying to decide whether or not she or he should hire a therapist or a coach. What are like the things that they should look for, or how would you
Mhm.
advise someone like that? What are some of the questions you would ask them? What are some of the things, the red flags, or whatever the
Yeah.
light that comes
Yeah.
up? You're
Well,
like,
the first like kind of black and white answer is that if you have like a real mental, like you're bipolar,
mhm,
or you have personality disorder, like for sure, like I am not trained in that. I don't know that. I'm not going to prescribe anybody drugs. So if you have like a real mental condition, you need to have a therapist, or psychologist that can prescribe you,
psychiatrist.
psychiatrists
Yeah.
that can prescribe you drugs. You know, I want to oversimplify it to some extent, that going back and into trusting that, if you need to have a coach or a therapist. um if there's I come in contact with a lot of people who have been through therapy. And I think therapy is a great space. I've been to therapy myself. I think it's great for developing awareness. I think it's great for learning about yourself. I think coaching is really about implementation. I think it's really about evolvement into letting go of those old identities. So maybe you discovered that you have a certain, way about you. And, I think coaching can help you rid of those ideas, right? Where first you need to know that you have them. And then it's like, okay, now what? Right. Like I have a lot of people that come to me and they're like, I've been to therapy, but like, now what? Like, I don't know what to do with all of this awareness.
Yeah.
Like, how do I actually implement the things that I learned? How do I actually think better? Like, I think coaching is thinking there's a term metacognition, which is thinking about the way that you think. So I think coaching, the way that I operate in my practice, is really, the way that you think is a big way driving force behind your behavior. So, really looking at the way that you're thinking and helping you think better, improving the quality of your thoughts, which for me at my core, besides, yes, in conjunction with spiritual practice, energy work, and, body healing, whatever you want to call it. But really, I had to learn how to think better about myself, think with more gentleness and kindness towards myself,
What
think about
helped
my
you learn
life.
to do that? Buddhism, your spiritual practice, Buddhism, because I know you've gone deep into, we talked a little bit about yoga, but I'm interested to hear a little bit more about your meditation or coaching, or is it a combination of the two?
So I hired a coach that I will say changed my life. I interviewed her on my podcast, Cindy Cornell. Um, she was very patient with me. She really supported me, and reflected back to me things that I couldn't see in myself. She asked such fabulous questions, and questions really help guide thinking. And she really helped me improve my thought process. And it took a long time. She even said in the podcast that I was a little bit stubborn. Jillian knows that I have that quality. um, but yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely, going back to neuroscience, we can rewire our brains through, repetitive new thoughts and thinking in new ways, and doing a bunch of exercises. The model of human functioning, which is thinking, feeling, behavior, results. So I would go through this process of writing down a thought, how it makes me feel, what behaviors I do when I have that thought, and the result. And then I would reverse it. What's the result that I want? What are the behaviors that support that? How would I feel if I was engaged in those behaviors? What would I think? So really doing a lot of exercises around that. So what ended up happening was, when I was 28, so I hired a coach when I was probably 26, 27, maybe. When I was 28, like things started to like catch up and unfold, and my business started to take off, and I met my husband, and um, we moved into a nice apartment where I met Jillian. um, and we got a dog.
Mhm.
And, life just changed for me. Like, but, it was definitely my inner experience changed, but also my outer world changed. And I saw it. And I saw
Was
things.
meditation happening during this or after this?
Not so much. I was meditating occasionally. So, then like, you know, I got married, and, we were traveling, and, actually, let me back up. Just before I got married, a month before my wedding, I knew that I was getting married. My business was in a fantastic spot. Like all these things that I didn't have and now had, I still felt like still not as happy as I thought I would be. And that's what led me to meditation. Is I was like, yeah, you can achieve your goals, but there's something more. And that's what led me to meditation. So I started meditation classes just before I got married. And that's what really got me into Buddhism. And yeah.
Okay, I just need to unpack this a little bit more.
Okay.
This is incredibly important for people listening. Goals are very important because they move things along, but it's super important that people know that it's not the be all and end all. And that usually when people reach goals, they have a little bit of like depression,
Mm-hmm.
sort of like, now what? And I know this so well, just, from life and being a yoga practitioner. Is like someone will be practicing a pose for like years and they finally get it. And it's like, okay, now what? And I it's like the achievement of a goal is extremely rewarding. However, that feeling of reward is very short term.
It's fleeting.
It's fleeting. And so, that being said, what did meditation give you? What did
Mm-hmm.
it instill in you that you were finally able to, I don't like to use the word happy, but finally feel like at peace? So that,
Yeah. So meditation took everything for me to like the next level, right? Um, Next level with all the fundamental things that we talked about, like, my relationship with food got even better, right? Um, you know, my, my happiness has improved. So there's a couple of things that, so we're so conditioned, and this is a challenge that I have as a coach, right? Because so much of coaching is, yeah, achieve your goal, right? What's your goal? What is it that you want? All of these things, and they're great, like you said. It helps you, like, you don't want to be somebody who's just like wandering on a course and have no idea where you're going. Like, it helps to have some type of aim, but also knowing that, sometimes you will get off course, and how to get back on, and because where you're trying to go. um so you know achieving, and this is what the essence of Buddhism, and really what Buddhism is it's really a science of the mind. It's less about like a religion, or like a, I don't know. This is my interpretation of it. It's really about psychology. It's Buddhist psychology. And there's a lot of really great tools about conditioning the mind. And so much of our society is conditioned in the sense where, we have a very achievement society, and that we think that when we achieve certain things, we'll get certain validation, we'll be loved and accepted and happy. And oftentimes we realize that you can't cure an inner hole with something that's outer. Like, it just doesn't work, right? I mean, we try to do that all the time. We're like, because we're so conditioned through society that, like, you need this in order to make you happy. And, and we see it, right? We see it with like Kate Spade. Once you like, she has this big brand, she has this lots of money, married, kid, they have, beautiful home in New York. She has everything, and then she's not happy, right? Because, really,
teach you that happiness or joy can only come from the inside.
um well, I don't know if it can only come from the inside, but I think that's the starting point. I
Mm.
think that, you if you don't have, like, if you don't have certain tools to understand your own mind, it's going to be nothing that you achieve is going to help you, right? It's really about understanding your mind. And what meditation does is it really gets you familiar with your mind, because your mind is different from my mind, which is a beautiful thing, right? No two people see the same reality. It's a beautiful thing. But we really need to know our minds on, and know, like, what gets us angry, and how to, and really sit with that and really look. And meditation gives you the space to bring up some of those experiences and really sit with it quietly, and sit with it and look at it from different angles. It also gives you, there's also meditations that, can help with loving kindness and forgiveness. And, one of the things is that when you you practice meditation and you get quiet and you get still, you realize that you don't need to create peace. Peace is already there. Once you let that, that dialogue that's so racy and telling you all the things you need to do and get, and it's, you sit and it pulls you away, and you come back and you sit, and and the voice does get quieter, and then peace just arises. You don't create it,
Right.
right? So you realize that, or at least I've realized that it just gives me also like more awareness, and that's helpful, right? You can't change something if you don't have awareness. And if you sit with your own mind and you actually listen to what it's doing, and distractions, this is also something that I've learned, which is why I've eliminated, like for example, alcohol, and I'm in the process of eliminating even more distractions, because I think distraction actually equals unhappiness. And we're a very distracted society. Like, we're like, oh, I'll just distract myself. I don't like my job. I'll just, sit in front of, YouTube, and, watch something on Netflix, or, eat, right? We're very distracted, and we think that short-term pleasure is going to lead to long-term happiness, and it just doesn't. It's the trick.
So, because I know we have to end soon, and I wanted, we're just talking about happiness and peace, and a lot of it is our discussion, I think, was very much focused on the layers you have to remove.
Mhm.
So, what do you add to your life? Like, what do you do for fun? And if, I know if I'm honest, that's something that I need to put more attention to is,
What, fun?
yeah, fun.
Yeah.
So I know, like, just even little things, doesn't have to be big things. So what do you like to do for fun?
Hmm. Well, for me, and this is the beautiful thing, is that fun is somewhat tied into, like, for me, a meditation class is fun.
Definitely.
And
I
and
get.
it's also slightly tied into work,
Mhm.
right? So I have this kind of overlap, which is beautiful, and I'm very grateful for that. And that's, I think, what we all desire to some capacity. But like, pure, like, oh, this is fun. Um,
Yeah, I'm kind of talking about the kind of fun, not the kind of thing where you're like, oh, it's really fulfilling for me to go to, like this is like
no,
I know
I
it's
think it's
so
fun
fun.
though, Jillian. Like, I
Yeah.
have fun.
Okay, good. Okay, great,
Like,
great.
for me, like, going to like a personal development event is like fun. Like,
Oh yeah, me too. You're
it's
preaching to
so
the choir.
fun.
Yeah, no, it's so much fun. I probably have more fun there. But like, I don't know,
Like,
like
yeah, I get what you're saying. Like, do I
do you
like
watch movies?
ride
Ride a
bikes?
bike, or I don't know, do you like movies? Do you like books? Like, do you ever just
Okay,
have like
here's a fun
turn
fact
your
about me.
mind off? Yeah,
Yeah, I barely ever watch movies. I've seen like three,
in your
and
life?
yeah,
No, you haven't seen just three movies in your life.
no, I've seen more, but barely any. Like,
Got it. I'm
ask me a popular movie.
what?
I haven't seen it. I said, ask me a popular movie. I haven't seen it. People are
Got
like, you haven't seen it? Rocky?
it.
Haven't
You
seen
didn't
it.
see you didn't see Rocky?
No,
Did
I
you see
haven't seen it.
you see The Godfather?
No,
Did you see like really?
really. I
That
don't watch movies.
I feel like you kind of have to. I really I don't even know.
I've
Like,
seen The Matrix.
I actually need to reevaluate our friendship. Like if you haven't seen The Godfather or Rocky, like I don't. I think like we may have to really have a
Mm,
conversation about this. That's a big
I
fucking.
know. I know. I once had this guy say to me, I'm going to make a list of movies that you have to watch.
But let me tell you something why you have to watch Rocky, because everything about our conversation points to that story. And if you look at the background information, what got Sylvester Stallone to even get that role is
Yeah,
such a powerful story.
I know the story.
Yeah. And also just the story within the story. So
Uh
I know we have to close, but can I give you like, as a coach right now, can I give you some homework?
huh. Well,
Can you watch Rocky? Just because I
I'll
think,
try. I'll try.
I don't think it's going to be a trying thing. I mean, you love
The thing is, Jillian, I
yeah.
don't like to watch movies. Occasionally, I like to watch a movie. And if I do watch a movie, I like it to be like a documentary or like something educational. I know that Rocky can be educational. I did love The Matrix because that has a very spiritual undertone to it.
Oh, you did like to me. Okay, okay.
Yeah. And
Okay.
that's probably like,
I'm
and I like true stories. Like I love, like, this is something, like I love to hear people's stories. I love stories. I like real ones. I don't like,
okay.
fabricated or created ones for whatever reason. I can appreciate them,
Yeah,
but
no,
it's
I
just not
get
my thing. Like I like, you
that.
know,
You watched
um
The Matrix and you liked it, so it's okay. No,
okay,
I
thank
want to
you.
have to reevaluate our friendship.
But let me see. What do I like to do for fun? That's a hard one. Um,
Play with your
I'm
kids?
I'm gonna yeah. I mean, fun has changed. My definition of fun, like like for me, like fun right now would be like doing nothing, sitting alone.
Yeah, exactly.
Fun in motherhood is like quiet time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, other than that, like traveling and playing sports, I would say.
You gonna get back on the court? Do you ever play tennis anymore, Anna?
I love yoga.
Okay.
Yoga is my thing. If I'm gonna I mean, sometimes I'll hit just for fun, but I got a lot of history there, and not as good as I used to be, and my body's just different, not as strong.
Are you afraid of not succeed, like doing it and not being as good and kind of letting that darkness come back?
Some of it. I have this really tough relationship with tennis, and I'm so grateful for it. But I love yoga now. That's like I like when I'm in a yoga class, like I can feel my heart smile.
Oh, good place to end.
Yeah, and the thing is like I don't want to be a yoga teacher. I know you are one. I've thought about it, but I really want that to be my hobby, my fun.
Oh, when you just said it makes your heart smile, like, end of chapter, full stop, close book.
Yeah.
That's where we got to end. I
All
love.
right. Thank you, Jillian. You're
Oh my
rock.
God, Anna, thank you so much. Happy
Thank you.
100th episode.
Thank you.